Most recaps just cover what happened in the movies that actually made it to theaters. But what about the ones that were made and never saw the light of day? Well, believe it or not, that's exactly what happened with a 1994 Fantastic Four movie. It wasn't made because anyone was passionate about the project. It was just a quick project to keep the film rights from slipping back to Marvel. Producer Bernd Eichinger had to crank out a movie before the year ended, so he brought in Roger Corman, worked with a super tiny budget, and shot a full-length film that got shelved immediately. Even though it never got an official release, fans managed to get their hands on it through bootleg tapes, piracy sites, and random YouTube clips. It's become this strange cult thing in comic book movie history. Now, besides that lost movie, I'll break down every Fantastic Four film and appearance that's happened over the years. But before we dive in, hit those like and subscribe buttons. It's quick, easy, and helps us a ton in bringing you more videos like this. Alright, let's get started. The plot follows Reed Richards and Victor Von Doom, who are college buddies doing science stuff with a passing comet called Colossus. The experiment backfires and Victor is presumed dead. Meanwhile, Reed rents a room in a boarding house run by the Storm family. That's where he meets young Susan and Johnny, along with Ben Grimm, Reed's college pal and all-around strong guy. 10 years go by, and Reed launches a mission to space, and Susan, Johnny, and Ben tag along. The comet Colossus is back, and so is the plan to harness its power. Unfortunately, their protective diamond has been swapped by a sewer-dwelling criminal called the Jeweler. Needless to say, this guy was more interested in hoarding shiny objects than shielding astronauts. The whole cosmic rays thing giving the Fantastic Four new powers happens. Reed becomes elastic, Susan turns invisible, Johnny can set himself on fire in a non-suicidal way, and as for Ben, well, he becomes a walking pile of rocks. They crash land back on Earth and are picked up by fake Marines working for... Any guesses? Anyone? Yep, these fake Marines were working for Victor, who didn't die, but instead turned into Dr. Doom. They escape and regroup at the Baxter building, unsure of their next steps. Ben, who by now had risen to the status of a grumpy pile of rocks, instead of just a pile of rocks, takes off on his own and ends up among the homeless. In fact, he eventually joins the Jeweler's crew in their underground lair. The Jeweler, in his creepy goblin wedding phase, kidnaps blind sculptor Alicia Masters and plans to marry her. He offers her the stolen diamond as a wedding gift, which naturally brings Doom back into the picture. Doom wants the diamond for his own world-ending device, and his goons show up to take it. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention that the diamond was a special one and had the ability to protect the crew from the cosmic rays. But I think it was evident. Moving on, Ben tries to save Alicia, but Doom gets hold of her. When Ben threatens to attack, Alicia confesses her love for him, and Ben reverts to human form, albeit briefly. Realizing he's powerless, he transforms back into the Thing and rejoins the group. Reed figures out Doom's identity and confronts him after the latter threatens to blow up New York unless the team surrenders. The group suits up and storms his castle. Reed fights Doom while Johnny flies into the sky as the Human Torch to intercept a laser beam. Doom falls from a balcony, his glove mysteriously twitching as he disappears into the mist. Meanwhile, Ben rescues Alicia and she accepts him as he is. With the day saved, the group commits to superhero work full-time. Later, Reed and Susan tie the knot and the credits roll on a movie that technically never existed, but the thing is, it somehow refuses to go away, and channels like Marvelous Videos are the reason behind it. Let me know if you think that's a good thing. Now, let's move on to the next phase in the lives of the Fantastic Four. The 2005 Fantastic Four was Fox's super major attempt to bring Marvel's first superhero family into the movie fold. Directed by Tim Story, the film arrived in theaters with an all-star cast, and of course with a bang. Ioan Gruffudd played Reed Richards, Jessica Alba was Sue Storm, Chris Evans played Johnny Storm and later Captain America, and again Johnny Storm in Deadpool and Wolverine. Ben Grimm was played by Michael Chiklis, and lastly, Julian McMahon played Victor Von Doom. The movie once again focused on the group's origin story, complete with cosmic rays, unstable relationships, and one very disgruntled ex-friend turned metallic tyrant. Reed Richards, scientist and elastic overachiever, ropes in his old buddy Ben Grimm for a trip to space. The plan is to study the effects of cosmic radiation on biological material. The only little hiccup is that they need someone with money and a spaceship. This is where we meet Victor Von Doom, CEO of Von Doom Industries and the kind of man who wears $3,000 suits even on a space station. Victor agrees to help Reed and his mission, but that's mostly because he thinks it will be good for his PR. But instead of supplying just the money and the motor, he also throws in the head researcher, who conveniently happens to be Reed's ex-girlfriend, Susan Storm. But Susan doesn't come alone. She comes as a package deal with her hotshot younger brother, Johnny. So, we have our team right here. Of course, every Fantastic Four movie has a slightly different take on how the heroes got their powers, and that's the case with the 2005 version as well. In here, everything goes sideways when the radiation storm arrives earlier than they had calculated. Ben was out on a spacewalk, so Reed, Sue, and Johnny left the shielded area to get him back to safety. Victor, like any self-respecting, uber-rich self-preservationist, locks himself in to protect himself from the cosmic storm, but the thing was powerful, and it surges through the crew anyway. In the aftermath, they survive all right, but none of them return quite the same. Back on Earth, their powers surface one by one. You all know about the powers, so I'll not get into the details again. But as for Victor, you see, he wasn't as protected as he thought and started showing signs of his own change. His skin turns into an organic metal, and he develops the ability to manipulate electricity. It's like he was the love child of Colossus and Storm, but you know, not a mutant. Anyway, Ben's first real act of public service as the Thing goes sideways and ends in a huge traffic accident on the Brooklyn Bridge, and while he was only trying to stop a man from jumping, no one really cared. The rest of the team members arrive to limit the collateral damage, and it does help in saving face. They save lives, earn the public's admiration, and get called the Fantastic Four. On the other hand, Ben's fiancée shows up, sees his new form, and walks away without a word. Although Reed promises to fix it, we know it would be easier to put the milk back into the cow than this. Meanwhile, Victor's stock plummets, and as his investors back out, his ego takes a hit harder than the one he took when that stupid storm hit him. He blames Reed for everything, and does what any pissed off man with the emotional intelligence of a chimpanzee would do. He begins to chalk out a plan for revenge. At the Baxter building, Reed sets up shop with the rest of the team and starts working on a machine to recreate the cosmic storm and reverse their mutations. Unsurprisingly, Johnny's not interested because, well, let's face it, he's having too much fun being a superhero. The most fun out of the other three. On the other hand, Victor's mutation accelerates faster than expected, both physically and mentally. He drives a wedge between Reed and Ben, convinces Ben to leave, and uses this opening to lure him back under false pretenses. He tricks Ben into stepping into the machine that would find him, quote-unquote, a cure. In fact, this guy was so efficient with his electricity stuff that he powered the machine with his own energy. The whole thing was a success, and Ben finds himself human again. With Ben out of the way, Victor knocks him out and kidnaps Reed. Now calling himself Doom, Victor tortures Reed with freezing tech and launches a missile at the Baxter building, aiming to take Johnny out. Johnny outruns it across the city and diverts it with a flaming barrage. Sue breaks in to rescue Reed, but struggles against Doom just in time. Ben realizes that he needs to make that sacrifice and voluntarily reuses the machine to become the Thing again. After getting his powers back, he returns to the fight and helps even the odds. The four members now assemble for the first time as a real superhero team and take Doom down by using water to snap freeze him into a metal statue. In the aftermath, Ben tells Reed to forget about trying to reverse his transformation because he's found someone. Yep, the woman he finds is Alicia Masters, a blind sculptor who sees more than most, but I believe making her blind kills the whole point the movie was trying to make about love and how beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Anyway, the team embraces their new status as superheroes, but somewhere in a dark crate on a ship bound for Latveria, Victor Doom was waiting to be, defrosted. The thing that's interesting about Fantastic Four is that the group had more reboots and first installments than most other films, but there was one sequel, and that's the only sequel FF film, right? So, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer was released in 2007, 2 years after the first film made decent money and slightly less decent reviews. Tim Story returned to direct, and the original cast came back. This time, they faced a silver guy on a flying board and the kind of interstellar threat that makes Victor Von Doom look like a petty landlord with a temper problem. The film opens with strange cosmic disturbances across the planet, power outages, weather spikes, and craters, so it was evident that something big had entered Earth's atmosphere. Reed gets pulled in by the government to track it, and despite being knee-deep in wedding plans with Sue, he tries to do his duty to the nation and humanity at large. Their upcoming marriage is already a media circus, so naturally, a global catastrophe is the icing on their cake that's called stress. Right in the middle of the ceremony, Reed's sensors go off. Johnny flies off to investigate and encounters the reason behind the sensors going off. It was a metallic humanoid riding a board at supersonic speeds. He tries to take him on, gets manhandled midair, and stumbles back to the team with more than bruised pride. After the run-in, Johnny discovers his powers now switch with whoever he touches. Basically, everyone everyone's powers were switching with everyone else's. One touch meant a power switch, and a second touch meant another switch. Reed traces the surfer's path and finds that every planet the figure visited ended up destroyed, and the surfer was now on Earth, which meant that Earth was supposed to be the next target. The team heads to London because that was determined to be the target, but by the time they arrive, a crater opens and the Thames drains into it. They manage to prevent further disaster. Meanwhile, Doom has been thawed out by a wave of cosmic energy that passed over Latveria. Once a metal statue, he's now fully mobile and somehow healed. He claims to want to help, and the military, desperate for solutions, accepts his help. Reed builds a pulse device meant to knock the surfer off his board. They corner him in the Black Forest, where Susan gets separated and has a heart-to-heart kind of thing with the surfer, who reveals he's not the one destroying planets. He's simply a servant, a herald, to something bigger, someone called Galactus. The military takes this moment of peace between Sue and the surfer to attack, and the pulse weapon knocks him off his board. The surfer gets imprisoned in Siberia, where the military immediately starts pressing him for answers. The Fantastic Four aren't convinced he's a villain. Sue sneaks in and speaks with him alone. He explains his deal with Galactus, a planet-eating cosmic entity. Galactus agreed to spare his homeworld in exchange for his service, and now he acts as a cosmic herald. The board isn't just transport, it's a beacon. While no one's looking, Doom snatches the board using a device he secretly built and flies off to China. Reed, Susan, Johnny, and Ben break the surfer out and chase Doom in the Fantastic Car. They find him in Shanghai, where he greets them by running Sue through with a cosmic energy spear. Johnny absorbs the team's combined powers and takes Doom head-on, while Ben disables him with a crane. The board separates from Doom, and his temporary god mode ends. Galactus finally arrives, and Sue dies in Reed's arm. The surfer, now reunited with his board, brings her back to life. He then flies straight into Galactus, who was totally engulfed in cosmic energy. The resulting blast swallows both of them and leaves only silence. Johnny's body stabilizes after his second contact with the surfer. No more power switching. After everything, Reed and Sue finally get married in Japan, though the ceremony barely finishes before an alert comes in about Venice sinking. Sue gives Reed a nod, and the team dashes off, and the world saving continues. In a mid-credit scene, the surfer floats lifeless in space until his eyes open and his board shoots back to him. Looks like his story isn't quite over, but the poor performance of the film meant that it was over for this version. Next up, we have Fantastic Four from 2015, which was supposed to be a clean slate. After two mid-2000s films that leaned more on slightly campy stuff than cosmic problems, Fox brought in Josh Trank to make Marvel's first superhero team grittier and slightly more serious. The cast had Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mara, and Jamie Bell. The cast was young, which meant that they wanted the team itself to look like a younger, brainier version of the team than the previous iterations. Unfortunately, behind-the-scenes problems ended up becoming more memorable than anything on screen. As for the film itself, it follows Reed Richards and Ben Grimm, childhood friends who've been building a crude teleportation device out of junkyard scraps. Their work eventually gets noticed by Professor Franklin Storm, head of the Baxter Foundation, which was a research center for gifted young minds. Reed is invited to join and work with Storm's two children. The first was Sue, who was a specialist in pattern recognition, and Johnny was a brilliant but impulsive engineer. They also collaborate with Victor Von Doom, a cynical genius with a chip on his shoulder and an eye on Reed's work, not for. Together, they complete a more sophisticated version of Reed's device and call it the Quantum Gate, which can transport matter to an alternate dimension called Planet Zero. The plan at first is to send NASA astronauts. That doesn't sit well with the kids who built the thing. So one night, Reed, Johnny, Victor, and a hastily recruited Ben decide to test it themselves. They land on Planet Zero, which looks like it's straight out of a radioactive fever dream. Victor touches some glowing green terrain. The ground erupts, and chaos follows. Reed, Johnny, and Ben make it back to the pod while Sue pulls them back remotely. Victor doesn't. He gets swallowed by the landscape and left behind. The quantum gate explodes on return, and all four are mutated on the molecular level. The whole power thing happens and the government locks them down in order to turn their bodies into test subjects. But Reed manages to escape, and his guilt forces him to go underground. 1 year later, Reed is seen hiding in Central America and wears a makeshift suit to control his powers while quietly working on a cure. The military tracks him down though, albeit with Sue's help, and Ben was now serving as a government operative, and he's the one who brings him in. Johnny and Sue have been turned into weapons too, complete with containment suits and structured training. Dr. Allen, the government liaison, puts Reed to work rebuilding the quantum gate in exchange for research materials. When the gate reopens, a recovery team finds Victor alive on Planet Zero. His body has fused with his suit, and his mind has veered off into full apocalyptic territory. He kills the research team, including Professor Storm, and flees back to Planet Zero. He now calls himself Doom because, for him, subtlety is dead, and decides Earth is a threat to his adopted planet. Using his newfound power, he builds a device from Planet Zero's terrain and begins tearing pieces out of Earth through the gate. Reed, Ben, Sue, and Johnny chase him down and face him in the alien terrain. Doom has telekinetic powers and a messiah complex. After a short battle, Ben lands the final blow by knocking him into the portal's energy column. Doom disintegrates. Johnny shuts down the gate, and the four return home. In exchange for saving the world, they're given a new facility by the government, free of oversight. They named it Central City. Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben agree to keep working together and finally settle on the name Fantastic Four. The movie did not land with critics or fans. The final cut bore little resemblance to Trank's earlier vision, and studio-mandated reshoots changed tone, structure, and even major plot points. The film obviously bombed at the box office because, you see, creative differences never end in a happy ending, and the reboot was swept into the bin alongside other failed reboots. A sequel was canceled, and the Fantastic Four sat on the bench until Disney acquired Fox and folded them into the MCU. Now, let's talk about the movies under the MCU banner that feature the Fantastic Four or their members. We know well that Marvel's first family has had a weird ride on screen. Over the years, the Fantastic Four have appeared in different universes, timelines, and tones, ranging from cheap licensing placeholders to serious studio reboots, from awkward family stories to full-blown interstellar disasters. But while previous iterations left the door cracked open, it's only now, after 2 decades, 3 reboots, and 1 multiversal bloodbath, that the MCU seems ready to give the team an actual home. After the 2015 reboot fell apart at the seams, the Fantastic Four disappeared from theaters for a few years. Then, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness gave fans a quick, almost troll-like taste. John Krasinski appeared as Reed Richards, stretchy genius, dad, and apparent Illuminati board member in Earth 838. It was a bit of fan service casting, as Krasinski had long been at the top of internet wish lists for the role. He shows up at Strange's multiversal trial, in the presence of his fellow Illuminati, including Charles Xavier, Captain Carter, and Black Bolt. Reed's role is mostly advisory, and he warns Strange about the dangers of multiversal incursions, but that warning doesn't matter for long. Wanda Maximoff, who was now completely unhinged, hijacked her alternate self's body and wiped the Illuminati from the face of the Earth. Earth 838, that is. Reed tries reasoning with her, but Wanda gives him a warning of her own, mutters something about his kids, then tears him apart like paper strips. So yeah, he pretty much dies alongside the rest of his high-powered council. Fans barely had time to blink and were left in shock. Next, we reached the year 2024 and got a sweet treat that some people like to call Deadpool and Wolverine. But this was also the return of another legacy face. Chris Evans, who played both Johnny Storm and Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, came back as the Human Torch. He still had the same flame-on attitude and awe from the original Fantastic Four movie. In this story, the Time Variance Authority has dumped several variants into the void, including Deadpool, Wolverine, and now Storm. Deadpool mistakes him for Steve at first, understandable given the face, but Johnny clears that up, but not before some really awesome banter. Next thing we know, he is totally mixed up in the chaos that Deadpool and Wolverine have brought in. Hey, just going a bit off topic, why was Thor crying? While you think about it, let's move on. So, after a short fight with Pyro, Johnny is captured along with Deadpool and Logan. As one would expect, things don't end well. Cassandra Nova, the film's villain and Professor X's evil twin, takes offense at some insults, courtesy of Deadpool's mouth, not Johnny's, and skins him alive, and he drops to pieces. To be honest, it was difficult for me to digest. Not because I can't take a little gore, but because a part of me was still seeing Chris Evans as Cap, and the respect for him that I had would not allow me to accept this despicable fate. You know what? Even Wolverine doesn't take it well, but Deadpool denies responsibility. However, in the post-credits scene, Wade rolls a tape that proves that, yes, Johnny did say all those terrible things. It's also revealed that Reed had been studying the Void. The Fantastic Car makes a cameo, written by none other than Toad, because apparently nothing is sacred anymore. Later in 2025, Thunderbolts ends with a quiet but significant moment. In a post-credits scene, the new Avengers receive a distress signal. It's coming from the Fantastic Four's ship, which appears to be entering Earth 616 from another reality. No faces are shown, but the message is clear. They're coming. Disney's $71.3 billion acquisition of Fox in 2019 gave Marvel Studios full control over the Fantastic Four. Kevin Feige confirmed a reboot at San Diego Comic-Con that same year, but things stayed quiet for a while. Originally, John Watts, director of the MCU's Spider-Man trilogy, was set to helm the film. He stepped down in 2022. A few months later, WandaVision director Matt Shakman took over. After a series of writing passes, first from Jeff Kaplan and Ian Springer, then a full rewrite by Josh Friedman, the project finally started to take shape. In February 2024, Marvel announced its core cast. Pedro Pascal would play Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby would step in as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn would light up as Johnny Storm, Eben Moss-Bachrach, fresh from The Bear, would portray Ben Grimm. In April, Julia Garner joined as Shala Bal, a version of the Silver Surfer. A month later, Raph Ineson signed on as Galactus. Other names like John Malkovich, Paul Walter Hauser, and Natasha Lyonne were also revealed, though their roles remain under wraps. Feige later confirmed that the Fantastic Four First Steps would not be an origin story and wouldn't be set in the primary MCU timeline either. Instead, it would take place in a retro-futuristic 1960s-inspired alternate reality. Michael's on board for the score, and principal photography ran from July to November 2024 in London. The film is scheduled to release on July 25th, 2025 as part of Phase 6. This version of the team won't be confined to one film either. During San Diego Comic-Con 2024, Marvel confirmed that the entire cast would return for Avengers Doomsday in 2026 and Avengers Secret Wars in 2027. Of course, Robert Downey Jr. is also set to return, not as Iron Man, but as Doctor Doom. Whether this is a multiversal twist or something more permanent, Marvel hasn't said, but the implications are massive. After years of false starts and missed opportunities, Marvel finally seems ready to do something substantial with its oldest superhero team, and this time, they're bringing Galactus with them. So yeah, that was all in this one, guys. See you in the next video. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks everyone.